Hello, hello! In this video we're going to go through memory pointers and storage slots basics. And we will do that by writing both the constructor as well as the getOwner function in Yule. So let's get started. First, let's deal with our constructor. And in order to write any Yule code, we need to have an assembly block in our function just like so. Now let's take a second to think about what we need to do here. Well, we need to take the msg.sender and store it in storage in the owner location. And in Yule, in order to interact with storage or memory for that matter, we need to use instructions. And for storage specifically, we have store and sload. And if your first thought was that we're going to use store to store a value, then you'd be absolutely right. And store takes two params. The first is the location in storage, and the second is the value that we want to store there. So let's start with the location in storage. And for that, all we have to do is use .slot on our owner, and that's it. And you will see that this works with other types of variables as well, but that is for future videos. And now we also want to pass the value that we want to store here, and that is the msg.sender. And the msg.sender has the equivalent of caller in Yule. So let's type it in, and believe it or not, we are actually done. Let's deploy it and check it out. And when I press owner, I should get the address from which I deployed the contract. And as you can see, this is correct. So we are done with the constructor. Now let's move on to the getOwner. And let's not forget our assembly block. And here we need to return from storage the owner. And this is the first tricky thing. In Yule, we cannot return a value straight from storage. We first need to store it, or well, pull it into memory, and then we can return it from there. So it's a two-step process. And in order to interact with memory, well, we have mstore and mload as instructions. And here we would first need to store a value in memory. So we would use mstore. And for this, we need to pass it two params as well as the store that we've used earlier. And again, the first one is the location, and the second one is the value that we want to store there. Now let's take a small break and talk about the locations in memory. These are the memory slots 0x0, 0x20, 0x40, and these are their equivalents in bytes. Each location has 32 bytes. And if you're looking at them and thinking, hey, why do I see increments of 20 here when the bytes are 32, 64, etc.? Well, that is because these are the hexadecimal representations of the bytes here. And I will prove it now by going to a hexadecimal converter, and let's try out 64, and when we convert it, we get 40, just as I left it here. And let's try 224. This is 32 times 8, and we would get E0, and I left it saved here as well. I will leave this link under the video, but also in the GitHub repo. Now let's come back to our method. And let's use a location in memory, and let's just go with the memory slot 0x40, which is also the free memory pointer. And here we need to store a value. And earlier we used owner.slot to basically get the storage slot. And we can use it again here, but this is incomplete. This is just the storage slot. This is not the actual value here. In order to get a value, we need to use another instruction, and in this case it would be sload. So we want to load from storage what is here in this slot. And we are done with the mstore. And the second part, well, the second step was to actually return this value, and return also takes two params. The first one is the location in memory, the location from which we start to return. And in this case it's 0x40. And then the second param is the size of what we want to return. In this case, we only want to return one memory slot. And for this we have 0x20, and that is it. That is it with the coding part, but if you don't believe me, let's try it out. And now when I press the getOwner method, I should get the same address as the owner. And voila, it is working. And since we're done with the coding part, let's have a bit of a look at how Yule compares to Solidity in terms of gas fees. And first, let's look at the constructor. And as you can see, the constructor requires 81k gas in Yule, but in Solidity it required 92k gas. So that's quite an improvement, 11k gas right off the bat. And now let's look at the get owner. And the get owner requires, let's say, 2.2k, and the get owner in Solidity requires 2.5k. So that's another 300 gas saved for, well, you or your users. And if you think that the benefits are worth it, we've only just gotten started, so buckle up. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments or DM me, and see you in the next videos. Thank you.